Welcome to Module 0 of Web Application Pentest Reporting. My name is Krista Constantine, and I will be the narrator for the next several modules for Web App Pentest Reporting. Welcome to Module 0. Let's talk about the planning for our module. We will look at report types, methodologies and standards, report format, and reading and resources. This slide talks about common questions that will be asked of you when you perform a pen test. One of them is, what is it that you do? What methodology do you use? And what is included in the report or final deliverable for the client? There are several common security assessment types. We have vulnerability assessment, pen testing, risk assessment, compliance. It's important to remember that some of our clients may not understand or may confuse the difference between a pen test and a vulnerability assessment. Vulnerability assessment and pen testing are two types of vulnerability testing that have different strengths and weaknesses. Vulnerability assessment is used to discover vulnerabilities, but does not differentiate between an exploitable flaw and those that are not exploitable. Penetration testing is used to attempt to exploit flaws or vulnerabilities to determine if unauthorized access or other malicious activities are feasible and pose a threat to the organization. The combination of these types of reporting can help provide a detailed view of flaws and risks for an organization. Compliance and security risk management are used in coordination with other types of testing. Compliance management assesses and manages organizational compliance regarding specific laws and regulations and policies in an industry vertical. Examples include Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard, PCI DSS, Sarbanes-Oxley Act, SOX, and Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, or HIPAA. Let's look at methodologies and standards. This is the place where we will start talking about how you pick the methodology according to the level of testing that will be conducted, and whether you choose one or a mashup of several different methodologies or standards to support the testing framework that you've chosen. Now we need to define methodologies and standards. This is important to do prior to meeting with our client. Methodologies are a set of processes or procedures that we follow to project completion. One example of this would be a penetration testing methodology that uses a testing roadmap. That roadmap would contain all of the ideas and practices that we would want to follow to complete our assessment. On the other hand, we have standards. These are collections of rules or guidelines that work in accordance to best practices. It's important to note that it's this combination of methodologies and standards that we use together to manage our project. Here are a couple of common methodologies and standards. We have a number to review. We have the Open Web Application Security Project, Open Source Security Testing Methodology Manual, Penetration Testing Execution Standard, National Institute of Standards and Technology, and Information System Security Assessment Framework. There are many options available, and these are free resources that can be found on the internet. Let's talk briefly about a testing methodology. Our testing methodology will depend upon what we are working with our client. In our example, we're working on web application penetration testing. This is the methodology that I put together to help with our testing. It includes information gathering, enumeration, footprinting, vulnerability analysis, exploitation, post-exploitation and cleanup, and reporting. One thing I would like to mention is that a resource that I have found very helpful in my work has included the Web Application Hacking Handbook and the OWASP Testing Guide. We have various scoping and testing types when we're pen testing. For our methodology, we would want to know from the client which type we are performing for them. We have white box testing, which would give you all of the information and in-depth knowledge and access that you need to test the environment. We have black box testing, which does not give you very much information. It's very, very limited. In fact, it might be an IP or an IP range. This would be considered similar to real-world hacking. And in the middle, we have gray box testing that is limited information and limited scope. Irregardless of the form of testing we pick with our client, we would still have the same end result, which would end up being our pen test report. Earlier in our conversation, we talked about common methodologies and standards, and here we're looking at the Open Web Application Security Project, or OWASP. It is one of the free available guides that you have from the internet. I included a link in the last bullet. It has 12 subcategories. It gives risk rating guidance, and it has a complete methodology in the testing guide. It has numerous ways of conducting web application testing and is well worth reviewing if you're doing a web application pen test. The Open Source Security Testing Methodology Manual, OSSTMM, is peer-reviewed. It has a report template on page 193 of the third version PDF. You can download it separately at the first link that I've provided. Current manuals require a paid membership. However, I've also included a link to the free version 3 manual, which you can download from the internet. The Penetration Testing Execution Standard was created in 2009 and provides hands-on technical guidelines for pen testers. I provided a link to it, and I also gave you a link to the report. I wanted to let you know that this particular standard gives new testers enough information to cover every aspect of pen testing. It includes detailed technical guidelines on what and how to test, rationale for testing, testing tools usage, and has 7 different phases for penetration testing. Let's talk about NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology. NIST has an 800 series, which are guidelines, recommendations, technical specifications, and annual reports for their cybersecurity activities. The special publications, or SP, are developed to address and support the security and privacy needs of U.S. federal government information and information systems. I've listed a couple of different SP publications that I think are useful for penetration testing, and they include the SP 830, which is risk assessment, the 853A, which is the risk management framework, and the 800-115 technical guide to information security testing and assessment. We also have the SP 800-115, which includes a list of resources. These are all free. The SP 800-115 helps organizations to plan and conduct technical information security testing and examinations, analyze findings, and develop mitigation strategies. These guides can be downloaded from NIST pubs at the link as I show below, and they are a really great resource with technical information, processes, procedures, and can help people find vulnerabilities in systems or networks and verify compliance with policy or other requirements. I wanted to include the Information System Security Assessment Framework. This is no longer maintained. However, there is a free RAR file download available at SourceForge. The last update was from 2015. However, if you do download the RAR file, it is full of Word document template files that are used to help standardize the assessment process. Within the main directory that has templates for assessment and technical control implementation, there's a subdirectory that has documents that are also specific to web application testing. Even though these are older resources, you may find parts of the templates useful in determining the type of reporting you'd like to do. Earlier, we talked about compliance for different industry verticals, so I've also included miscellaneous testing guides. One at the top is PCI DSS, or the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standard. There's FedRAMP, which is the Federal Risk and Authorization Management Program. That is a United States government-wide program that provides standardized approach to security assessment, authorization, and continuous monitoring for the cloud. We have CREST, which is an approved accreditation body under the UK government Cyber Essential Scheme. And what that is a group that certifies member companies that provide services such as penetration testing. I have included two optional resources. The first is a full sample pen test report. This has numerous sections that could be used as a model for the pen test report you'll write for this course. The second link we saw in the previous slide. However, I want to point out the reporting template is located in this FedRAMP document on page 21. That can also be used to help guide you in your report writing for this course material. This section I will discuss reporting format. What format do I use? It is important for your penetration test assessment activities and all of your results to be organized and compiled into a comprehensive pen test report. As a result, we need to have a clear idea of the way to do that and the format we should use to do that activity. Writing for pen test reporting has various stages. We need to plan. We should know our audience. We need to be clear in how we identify risk and include the actions and recommendations for remediation. It's important to use a template during the planning stage. We will be collecting our information from our pen test assessment activities. We will write a first draft, perform a review, and write our final report. When we look at our report format, we would use available tools that support the reporting that we're doing. We should spell check. We should use free templates. We should use consistent headers, footers, fonts, font sizes, and margins across the entire document. It's also important to use your own language. It's better not to plagiarize. In some cases, you will be using language that is technical, in which case that will look very similar to information that is directly taken from different locations that give details about exploits and vulnerabilities, but we should be clear about what is our own work and what is the work of others and cite our references and resources as need be. Proper documentation is a very, very important step of the report format. We should keep structured, detailed, and consistent notes. We would like to have all of our work documented. So every step you're taking, all of the work you're doing, you should document it. That includes our testing methodology, summaries, screenshots, details, threats, risks. You have different options for how you do this depending on how you like to work. Some people like to create templates for every single tool they use in their tests. So if they use Burp, they have one template. They use Nmap, they have another template. It just depends on the way you like to work. Please do not rely only upon one tool. Use different tools that have the same purpose. And know that if you make any mistakes, that could lead to a legal issue with your client. So be very clear about keeping your documentation and keeping detailed, consistent notes. Know your audience. It's important to know who will be reading your report. You may be required to generate multiple reports. For example, you may need a report for executives or for managers, and then a different report for technical staff. So know who it is that you'll be giving the information to and what is required to you as a deliverable for your client. This delivery can be one report with multiple sections, depending on how you would like to format it. And that can be aimed at a specific audience, or you can have separate reports for the different audiences that are required. There are different report types such as executive report, management report, and technical report. Reporting from a pen test can take many forms because the audience can vary by test. It may not be easy to define who will read the final report, but most likely it will be viewed by 3 different types of audience, such as managers, IT staff, and developers. Executive reports are typically a high-level view. These reports are typically prepared for C-suite executives. They have various elements to the report format. One would be an objective, summary. Oftentimes they include visuals and statistics for the vulnerabilities that were found. They categorize vulnerabilities, identify affected resources, and list recommendations, and have a conclusion. Management wants to know if the organization is secure, and if something is found, they want to know who is responsible. That could be person, policy, or procedure. And the managers will also want to know what must be fixed first. Management reporting covers regulatory or compliance issues discovered in the test. It is oftentimes an extension of the executive report. It includes other elements in addition to what you would find in the executive report, such as standards mapping, regulatory violations, methodologies, security issues overview, remediation recommendations, and conclusion. Know that these first 2 reporting types can include elements of each other. It just depends on what deliverable is required by your client. This varies by client and by test type. The technical report is written to help technical people address security issues that you uncovered during your pen test. Frequently, these technical reports detail exploits, business impact, have solutions. Different elements include the security issue, the attack method, the implication, the resources that were impacted. It may include a map that contains all of your discovered vulnerabilities by IP or target name. It often includes exploits, the ones that you were successful at during your test, and it will include exploit code and screenshots, best practices, including technical details of what you can do to protect organizational resources, and a conclusion. Again, we might be talking to IT staff with this report because they would be responsible for addressing issues. It could be a developer due to issues found in the code of their application. So these reports require details so that these individuals can correct the flaws that were discovered during testing. Now let's examine the content we would include in our pen test report. Usually there is an executive summary. It has scope, objectives, timelines, summaries of our findings, recommendations. These are high-level details. We include our methodology. We would like to describe to our client what we did. That includes our planning, the exploits, the reporting. We talk about our findings, describe in detail what we discovered. We have a conclusion. And then typically we include an appendix that would have deeper technical information for exploits. It would have references, screenshots, and it may also include some of the sources where we found our code for our exploits. Let's talk about failures in pen test reporting. How we present our findings to our clients can be a determining factor on the success of our report. Oftentimes, pen test reports fail to a variety of issues, such as poor grammar, spelling, illogical flow, or unclear remediation instructions. So if your pen test deliverable does not meet client expectations, this can be an issue in having a repeat test with that client or in doing other pen tests. Do not deliver a vuln scan report. Do not just blindly trust your scanned results. You would need to verify everything that comes out of an automated tool to determine whether it is a false positive or not. Make sure that you stay in scope. I cannot stress enough how important it is that you do not test items that are out of scope. Do not fall short in addressing the issues that you discovered, and ensure that you securely transmit your reporting materials. Please do not store client materials or cross-contaminate client data. For our course planning, we should have our test environment already set up. In our case, we'll be using Kali Linux, and we will need to pick a vulnerable web application to test. We would want to keep all of the data from our testing tools so that we can do our write-up and do the reporting correctly. We need all of our documentation to include detailed steps of the actions that we took so that we can put this in our report. Here's a list of some vulnerable applications that you can choose, or you can pick one of your own choosing. You can install Juice Shop or Damn Vulnerable Web App or WebGoat or Hackathon. Just make sure if you're using anything that's online that you do not perform a denial of service. You would want to consider this similar to testing a real client application in that you do not want to flood it with traffic and take it down. There are various vulnerable web apps that you can pick to work with for our module. I did a little write-up here on Juice Shop. You have various options for Juice Shop as well in terms of how you install it. You can do Docker, you can use Vagrant, or you can actually just install it locally on your Kali VM. If that's what you choose to do, you'll want to make sure that you have the correct version of Node.js and that you follow the instructions from GitHub from the link that I've provided here for the flavor of Linux that you're using. You want to make sure you used the packaged distribution instructions when you're doing the installation, and that you'll want to also know what version of Node you've picked for Kali, and then choose the correct package of Juice Shop based upon the version of Node. Again, if you're having any kinds of issues, you have some instructions there for NPM installation, and good luck with getting your vulnerable app ready for the class. In conclusion, you should know your capabilities and limits and ensure that your deliverables meet client expectation. That includes feedback and suggestions to your client in your final report for how they should secure their assets. The report should be usable. You want to make sure that you're presenting your test findings clearly and using language geared for the intended audience. Please give credit and provide details about work you've used from other researchers or authors. If you have an appendix that would contain the output from your scanning tools, vuln test results, or other pertinent information related to your testing but not essential to your main findings. And most importantly, when you have a report ready for delivery, you want to make sure that you transmit it securely to your client, because this report will contain details about vulnerabilities and exploits for your customer. It's important to make sure that you send the report in a secure manner. So if you're sharing samples of pen test reports with companies, you just want to make sure that your sample reports also do not contain details for real organizations. Know that the responsibility to protect this report does not stop or end at the end of your engagement, but you must perform due diligence to ensure the confidentiality of your client test results.